companies with the long sales cycles. I focus mostly on fintech, biotech, cybersecurity, pharma. And today we have a great guest today. His name is Murray Vince. He's the founder of IDOV. He's got a great community as well, and he's all about ABM go-to-market strategy. But I think it's best if Murray does his own intro. What you do, Murray? Tell us everything about yourself. What you think would matter.
Thank you, Stefan. It's good to be able to do this webinar with you. So for background, I've worked in a mix of Fortune 10 companies, Apple and Microsoft. I've also done a lot of startups. And I've done a mix of business development, sales roles, and also legal counsel, helping with governance and compliance.
Okay.
A few years ago, I was working at a company in Laguna Beach in Southern California. And the founder there and their head of marketing kept talking about this thing called ABM, account-based marketing. And they talked about it, but they couldn't really explain what it was. And they said, oh, it's deep personalization, and you contact a prospect and you send them something special to them that'll get their attention. And I thought, okay, it's interesting, but it has to be more. And I dug a lot deeper, and every year I like to do a skills upgrade, and I started taking online courses, and I took the demand-based foundations course, which I thought was really impressive, and it's still available online. So if people are interested, I'd recommend that. It's a good way to get grounded in ABM. There's no real magic behind it. It's a methodology. It's a simple process to follow that I would tend to follow in business development. Mm-hmm. But, occasionally I'd miss a step, or you'd rush to get through it. And when I practiced it as a methodology and went step by step, I noticed my conversion rates would change. And it was a lot more effective.
Yeah.
And that's how I got started. And I've become a really good advocate for account-based marketing now. I run an interest group on LinkedIn, run a interest group focused on ABM jobs, publishing 3 times a week on LinkedIn, on Medium. I have a Teachable course, a YouTube channel. So this is something I'm really passionate about, and I'm really encouraging revenue professionals in biz dev, marketing, sales, operations to pay attention to ABM and to adopt some of the best practices.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, cool. So we have a presentation here about 7-step account-based marketing process. So I bet everyone's waiting for the 7 steps, which I think ABM is. So a few words. I think ABM is actually, honestly, it's not that hard. It's just people who make it hard. I think for me personally, the hardest part of ABM is actually aligning marketing and sales on certain metrics like pipeline to awareness to pipeline ratio, pipeline to closure ratio. Like just pick a number, anything would work as long as you align to it and you're like, both marketing and sales are doing the same thing, right? So we're digging towards one goal. But I like ABM processes like yours, where you have steps where it goes more like into a process, and doesn't sound like, oh, I'm just gonna deliver more meetings to sales. It's never this kind of thinking mindset never worked with companies that I work with, and I would say oversimplistic designation, ABM designation also doesn't work, but a process that actually converts, builds demand on the ABM side and also converts demand on the ABM side helps a lot. So let's go into your presentation. Let's see what you have here, and then let's get it going. Thanks, Mary.
Sounds good. Thanks, Stefan. So why ABM works, and there's a couple of things that I would point to, and empirically, because we want to know empirically, not based on opinion, not based on emotion, but buyers do about 50% of their buying journey before they actually reach out and contact a vendor. So they look online, they do their own research, and the B2B purchase, and we're focused more on B2B than B2C here, involves multiple stakeholders. And depending on the industry and target size of the companies, whether you're doing enterprise or SMB, you're probably looking at a buying committee of about 5 to 10 people. So the reason ABM works is focus beats volume. Instead of spreading the message and scattergun approach, being really narrowly laser focused on a few prospects that will matter to the business and bring you the greatest return.
Mhm.
And as Stefan said, the B2B requires team alignment, insight, and proof, like the empirical proof. So not just activity. And that's how it makes a difference. So with that, as we mentioned, there's some random acts of marketing that people will throw up to try and re-engage revenue and get things moving. And if you're looking at are you on side or off side on this, you're looking at if it's generic marketing, you're probably not doing a focused ABM approach. Campaign driven activity versus a focused on results. If you're chasing weak deals, small deals, clients that they're nice to have, but they're really not at the top of your priority list. Vanity metrics like measuring clicks that may not translate to revenue. Don't have a shared process with unified team alignment, and your pipeline's unpredictable. You really aren't smoothing it out. Where IBM changes is they do a deep prospect account insight. They map out the buying group to understand who's there. Is finance involved? Are technicians involved? Are users involved? And that's outside looking in until you get a chance to talk to the prospect. You
Yep.
need to put together some decision kits with proof. Stefan?
No, no, I was just saying, yeah, yeah, you're right. Go on.
And orchestrated outreach. So it's a coordinated team effort across business development, sales, marketing, and they start to study the customer journey in depth to understand every phase of the customer journey. How much research have they done? Are they reading your content? From the time they start reading your content, when are you seeing queries? And then measurement. There's a weekly scoreboard discipline to measure how things are progressing. So, and as Stefan said, it works well when the teams are aligned and they run a consistent revenue process. It's not just a stream of campaigns. The way I like to describe this, there's the father of quality management, Edwards Deming, and he's got a great quote that says, if you can't explain what you're doing as a process, you probably don't know what you're doing. So the simplicity of being able to articulate a process that you can follow, that all your team members get. One, you want to focus on account selection. You want to start there. Two, you want to do the account insight research and understand what's going on at the business of your prospects. Three, you need to understand the people that are at the prospects. Who are you going to be talking to? What's their role? And are they experiencing the problem that you solve? Four, content and messaging. Five, the fun part, prospect outreach, which cold calls cause some anxiety for us. But the more we're prepared and focused with ABM, the more success we have, the more effective we are. It deflates that anxiety. Six, customer journey. What are the steps? How are we improving it consistently? And seven, ROI in measurement. And we'll see that that's at the center of all the 7 steps. And having done courses and looked at different approaches to ABM, whether it's Marketo, Salesforce, Demand Base, these are pretty much you can distill all of their process into about 7 consistent steps. So when we see a problem, and what you might be diagnosing internally is the campaigns are not directly and deliberately tied to real prospects and accounts. We want to focus on the prospects that matter most. We want to eliminate the generic messaging, get to high level personalization, and we don't want to be chasing these weak opportunities. So activity increases when you have a problem and you're not really focused, but your revenue doesn't. So you're probably dissatisfied with the revenue that's being generated. This is how we can apply a very simple process to address that. When we look at this, this is the process that the team should be able to articulate. They need to know the 7 steps. They need to be able to be sure that they have followed each one of them. It's like having a recipe and leaving out a step, leaving out an ingredient. It's not going to taste very good. It's not going to be the result you want. And also, if your revenue team is struggling, your process is struggling, your pipeline is struggling, you can use this to triage the problems. What step are you missing? Which one are you not spending enough time on? so that you can improve. So, step one, account selection. And this is fit first. So, the deliverables here are you need an ICP, an ideal customer profile. You need to scrub that. And as you get revenue traction, you bring in new prospects, you want to go and scrub it again and look at it and get that field feedback. Talk to the people who are in the field, talking with customers and prospects, because your ICP last year is not going to be the same as it is this year. And sometimes it changes quarter by quarter. You want to look at an account scorecard, and I wouldn't do a 1 to 10 ranking. It's really cumbersome. It's hard to manage. I would do something really simple. What we recommend is, for those prospects that are really in the sweet spot, that are exactly what you want, they score a +1.
Mm-hmm.
If they are good but not great, you give them a 0. It's kind of neutral. And if they're outside your sweet spot, you score them a -1. And we'll take a look at what that looks like. So you have a scorecard with the criteria you've established for your prime customers. Could be geographic proximity, could be a competitive win, could be the number of customers there, could be someone that you think would be an ideal case study. You come up with the metrics, probably 5 to 10, not more than that. The owners of this are sales, marketing, finance, that entire V team of your revenue team. And you look at a percentage of pipeline on the +1 accounts. That's where you're going to focus. The trap here is your list is too big. You have too many prospects. So with an example of that, this is something that we did for a heavy equipment company. We've made some fictitious names on the left, but an example of the criteria that this client wanted to do. They wanted 50 plus employees. They wanted a marketing staff of about 5. They wanted companies in a 50-mile radius. They're location-based. Companies are working on government projects and that would need services in addition to buying heavy equipment. And you can see the score. Acme comes out as a +3. Build-A-Lot's a +3. But you get about midway through, Dig It All Excavation, they're about a 0. They're okay as a prospect, but they're not at the top of your list. And then examples of the negative: Blast Quarry, Story High Rise. Those are negatives. You really should not be spending time and money on that. So, time allowed. We're going to go through this pretty quickly, and we can answer more questions at the end. But we're going to move on to step 2. Know the customer's business. So you've identified the customers you want. Step 1. Step 2. You're going to dig in really deeply and learn everything you can about that client outside looking in. You want to look at their webpage. You want to look at videos you put out. You want to look at any communications they have. Look at Yelp reviews, business reviews. Are there customers complaining about a problem you can solve? That's a really good opportunity to understand what's going on in that business. And you can build that into step 4 later, content and messaging. So with step 2, here's an example of an account template. You want to look at the company. Fiscal year end is important because often you get into a budget year and they may have surplus budget that they need to use, or they may say, we're out of budget, come see me. You want to be able to understand what quarter that happens in. Do they have any major competitors? And you want to look at that alignment between the problem you think they're experiencing outside looking in and the solution that you are solving. So we will have a sample template that I'll work with Stefan, and we'll provide a site where we can get it to you or send us your email and we'll get you this. But with the templates, we'll provide samples of all of those available for follow-up. So that's account insight. I think pretty much every professional sales business development person, if you started as an SDR, you certainly know this, but you want to look at the business and understand it in some depth. Moving on from there, who are the people at the business that you're going to have to contact? Particularly not 1 or 2 people, but the buying group. You don't want to spam the entire company. You don't want to call too low. You don't want to call too high. So you're going to look at mapping out who's the person that you should be working with. What do you know about them? How do you reach them through LinkedIn? Can you find their email? Can you find a phone number? There's a number of services that you can use like Zoom, Rocket Reach, that will provide you that detail in depth.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to focus on the people who will make decisions, are directly impacted by the problem you solve, or that have budget authority. Don't leave out the budget authority. So moving through this, here's an example of the template we use. This would have 1, 2, 3, 4 people on it for a company. Again, you don't want to be 20, 15 people you're reaching out to. It's got to be really focused. You want to know who they are. You want to know their title. You want to know LinkedIn. You want to find their email, where they fit in the reporting structure. And then the notes, you want to look at insight. Like what can you determine about this person? One of the things that we found in psychographics is when you look at their LinkedIn, they talk about themselves like they alone delivered every achievement in their career. Do they give credit to a team? Do they talk about we, or do they talk about I?
Mm-hmm.
And what we found consistently is the people who talk about we and who understand team dynamics are much more open to having an outside vendor come in and assist them in solving a problem. So look for that kind of insight into a person. What's their motivation? What are their triggers? How do they talk about their achievements? So that's an example of the template we would use in ABM 3, where we do the people insight to learn about who we're going to contact. Now that we've learned about the company, we've learned about the people there, and we've really carefully scrubbed ABM 1, account selection, who we're bringing in, we want to focus our message in a revenue campaign specifically on the problem for those customers, and we want to start to tailor and personalize the content and the messaging. Remember when we started, about 50% of the way through the buyer's journey, the vendors have already done their research. So if they're not reading your web page, your information, your sales collateral.
Miriam, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We have a question. So I usually
Yes.
take questions as the
Yeah,
first.
let's take the question.
So Bahaudin Aziz here he has a question. To the previous slide, he's asking, does this, first of all, thank you for asking the question. Second, the question is, does this kind of detailed research make sense for SaaS as well, software as a service as well, or just agencies with a decent ticket size?
If you are in a sales role or you're in marketing, compiling the list of marketing qualified leads that eventually mature to sales qualified leads, if the target company is in SaaS, then yes, you're going to want to find the buyer on the other side. Let's take an example of a SaaS tool that is used by the sales team, like a Salesforce type of CRM. You want to look at who's making that decision. Is it the CRO? Is it the head of sales? Is it the head of marketing? Is the IT department involved? But you need to understand who would be buying your product. Who's the person that faces the problem you solve? Would they alone typically be able to make the purchase? If it's a low friction price point, then they might be able to buy it and expense it, and you could be dealing with one individual.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a more expensive SaaS product and it's $1,000 a month or $15,000 a year, you might have to deal with the CFO, the head of IT, because they're going to have to implement it and support it internally. Maybe a question for the CMO, the head of sales, a CRO. So yes, my answer is, in SaaS, you do need to do this kind of work. You need to understand who you are selling to. And the more information you can find out about them and the more you understand, the more effective you will be in personalizing messages and establishing a rapport with them when you reach out and make contact and try to sell your solution to them.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Cool.
Okay, and happy to take questions. If the questions are really complex, we may push them to the end, but we'll get through the content for the sake of everyone. And then if there are questions at the end and people want to stay and do a longer Q&A, I'm happy to do that.
All right, cool. Let's continue. Let's go. Yeah.
So getting back to ABM step 4, content and messaging, you've learned a lot about the people. You know your solution in depth. We're never really going to start with, I'd love to talk with you. I'll give you a free demo. Mm-hmm. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
What they care about is the problem they have every day. It's like, oh, my CRM tool is horrible. I wish I had a better SaaS vendor that was more responsive. I wish it was lower friction and easier for my sales and business development people to put input to. Okay, now if that aligns with your value prop and where you solve a problem, the opening, the content, and the messaging is about, do you have a problem where your sales and business development people are complaining about it? They're losing time. They're spending too much time in the office. Don't start with you. Don't start with what you want. Don't start with features and specs. Focus on the client completely. I mean, every time I get a LinkedIn request with I want to, I'd like to, I delete it and I block them. It's just amateur hour. It's not worth tolerating. But where it starts with, gee, Murray, I noticed that your business is doing this. Your content frequency is only 3 times a week. Maybe it should be 5 times a week. It's like, okay, he's paying attention to me. It's personalized. He knows the problem I have, or she knows the problem I have. I got to pay attention to it. So everything we've done leading up to this informs and helps us make our content and messaging more personalized and more effective. And in doing this, the thing that attracted me to ABM is I went from a high teens, low 20s conversion rate on first connection to mid to high 30%.
Wow.
Really had an impact. I had a client that did a product for investment managers, and we rewrote the outreach from essentially a list of features and specs and what he wanted to do, which was provide a demo, to a better statement of the problem these investment managers were facing. And John, in that case, got a 60% connection rate with a corresponding change in close rate.
Oh, wow.
He was ecstatic with the change that he had. We can't do that every time, but that was one example of a very effective business development person.
Mhm.
Very calm, great delivery, but we helped to reorient his outbound messaging, made a massive impact on his connection rate and conversion rate.
Awesome. Love that.
So these are the kind of elements that we work with in content and messaging, where we want to talk to people who will promote us. We want to break through into strangers who are really not aware of what we're doing. We have prospects that we identify as people who know they have the problem. They're the near term. They're really the sweet spot. And then there's customers who are buying our product, and we want to reinforce that, help them with upgrades, help them with version 2.0, 3.0, new services, and upsell them.
Mhm.
Here's a template of what that looks like. So with the content and messaging plan, we have a Tuesday, Thursday cadence for this particular client. We have some working titles. We know who wrote it. And then we follow and we look at engagement. We look at reposts. We look at shares. We look at comments. And every month we know which subjects outperformed.
Mhm.
And we just do more of those in the next month. Everything is empirical. It's measured for improvement. So we have these templates where we can provide you with the background on this. It'll help you see how to organize the content, and then the messaging flows out of the content. But 50% of our buyers are doing the research online. Your content has to be there. You have to influence them before your competitors influence them. You have to project competence, expertise, experience, reliability, and trust. And that comes from being there consistently with content. If your content's unreliable and doesn't show up every Tuesday, people form a subconscious opinion about you and your business. You're not there all the time, you're not reliable. So moving to step 5, which is the one I would always tend to jump to, like jump into it, go talk to people, go reach them.
Mhm.
But I wasn't always reaching the right people. I was reaching clients that frankly just didn't matter. There's a principle in sales that came from a guy named Professor Lant, who I think was based in Southern California. It's about 30 years old now. And Lant's rule of 7. And that was, you really had to contact someone about 7 times, have a favorable impression each of 7 times before they got the trust and curiosity to make a purchase decision.
Mhm.
And with the discussion I've had with people in revenue professionals, people in the industry, this Lance rule of 7 may have applied in the 70s, with a complex commercial sale, particularly something like SaaS, we're probably looking at something more like 12 to 15 touches per account before they
Mm,
build that trust and that sense of, oh, you are reliable, I can trust what you're doing, your content makes sense to me, you understand my problem. And those have to be value touches, they have to be follow up, they have to be sincere. And you have to look at the channel. Where are your customers from the research you did in ABM3? Where are they getting their content? Where are they reading? Where are you finding them? So the idea of spray and pray with this generic, scattered approach to content, that doesn't work as well. You really need to be focused, and you need articles that you can forward to your prospects and go, look, this almost looks like it was written exactly for you. Describes your problem, describes an ideal solution. Oh, and by the way, that ideal solution, that's available from us.
okay.
There's an outreach template that we use, looks at the company, looks at the number of contacts, looks at the number of LinkedIn. This is LinkedIn invites sent out. We know the percentage of accepts. We know how many times we got the email for that prospect. We know how many times that led to, in this case, a trade commission discussion, then a telephone call. It follows the progression of a deal. Like you talk to someone, you have cold outreach, you connect, you exchange emails, you have a call, you may do a demo, you close an NDA, you send over a proposal, how many iterations of the proposal you go through. So this template actually builds out more and more to the right-hand side from the reader's perspective until it gets to revenue, gets to contract renewal a year later. But that's the level of detail that we follow. And if you work with CRM, your CRM tools should be doing this. If not, you need to use something simple where you move from high teens in terms of connect rate into that high 30s, or as the case for the guy that was selling something for investment managers, turned into a 60% conversion rate. Step 6, and we're getting close to the end. This is the customer journey. We need to understand this. We need to understand from our prospects and our buyers, when did they start doing research? Did they really spend about 50% of their time doing research? Who else did they research? What other web pages are they looking at? We want to map this. We want to see if we can look for improvements. If your team is taking 12 to 15 days to turn around a non-disclosure agreement, there's an opportunity for improvement, right? What's the bottleneck? What happened? Is legal taking too long? Is it getting lost in DocuSign? Is it going to people's spam filters? They lose it for 2 or 3 days. That should be a 2 business turnaround. If it's taking you 14 days to get approval by the CFO to clear proposals before they go out, that's taking too long. It gives the prospect too much time to reevaluate, look at competitors. If competitors are there faster and the proposal's on the desk before yours is, you're probably going to lose business. So we really want to measure and look at that customer journey conscientiously and just keep track of it. Look at the time, look at the turnaround, look for improvements. This is an area where there's a Japanese principle called Kaizen. Kaizen is about small incremental adjustments and improvements every day, even if they're small or they seem trivial. But when you add those up over 365 days, it's a dramatic impact in the business because the cumulative effect of small daily improvements really adds up. So this is the customer journey. Here's an example of a fairly simple customer journey we did, where we look at week 1, what were we doing, week 2, and it also ties into that Lance rule of 7, now probably closer to 12 or 15. How many touch points do you have? How close are we getting? How many days are we wasting on stuff where people are sitting on things, it's gone to their spam folder, legal's not turning the NDA around? You want to keep chipping away at that and refining it and improving it. So with that, we're going to go to the last item, and this is in the center of that diagram. All of the other aspects of ABM are around the outside. We put ROI and measurement on the inside. Because if you don't have data, you're just another person with an opinion. And we can't have a well-aligned team where people are just fighting based on these visceral Oh, my gut tells me to do this. It's like, what does the data tell us to do?
Mhm.
So this is relentless measurement. This is an essential element of ABM. If you want to improve and you want the Kaizen, you want those little incremental improvements all the time to make the customer journey better, to make things easier for your staff, to make sure the revenue this month is bigger than last month, to make sure the deal cycle smaller this month and shorter than it was the month before. If the customer basket, that dollar value attached to a deal, is a little bigger this month than it was last month, you need to measure. So you can really only manage the stuff you're measuring. If you're not measuring it, you can't measure it properly. So
Yeah.
here's an example for one team that looked at each of the 7 steps, and they had metrics assigned to each one. It was account selection getting more precise. How many errors were they finding in account insight research that was being done? How many errors? How reliable was the people insight? Was the content and messaging, was engagement, shares, and comments, was that increasing or was it
Mhm.
decreasing? Outreach, were you moving from 19% to 21% to 30%, or were you stagnant? Customer journey, were you understanding that better? Were your customers giving you better scores in terms of their buying experience? And you can even measure ROI and measurement in terms of, is the dashboard, are the key indices giving you better input this month than they did last month? And that was by campaign. So you want to start on ABM this quarter, build your account briefs. That's ABM 2. Map the buying group. That's ABM 3. Get your content plan, scrub that, ABM 4. Run orchestrated outreach, 5. Customer journey, 6. Pick up your scoreboard. We're recommending kind of a weekly check-in until you get it under control. And ABM's it's not a single campaign. It's not a one and done. It's like a revenue operating system, strategic, and it's deployed for the long term. Max, pick probably minimum 20, minimum 10 accounts, maximum 25. Don't overdo it.
Mhm.
Shouldn't be 100, shouldn't be 50. Make it manageable, make it focused to get started. So with that, we'll take more questions. And if you need to reach us, there's contact information that'll be available here. And also, I'll work with Stefan and we'll get the templates up on a share site, or we'll email them to directly, whatever works best. Stefan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, Amir, thank you. We don't have questions, but I do have some questions. There, in fact, there's something I want to discuss with you. So before the step number 2, there was the lead scoring scorecard. I'd like to discuss the one.
Oh, on step 2?
Yeah, before step 2. Yeah, before that, this one.
This one.
Yeah, this one. Yeah,
Oh, account selection.
yeah, this one. So you went really quickly through this one, but I think this is super crucial. So at least for me, what this looks like, I'll come with an example. So I'm working with this fintech organization, and they have some sort of a lead scoring machine which they've built using. Uh, they have they have a tool which scrapes signals. They have a tool which gathers all the insights in from Salesforce. So based on that, they get all the scorecard, right, for each account. Now, I think what's important now. I think what is important nowadays is not only to have this is like all this all sounds so far, sounds like a first party data, but you always also need to integrate third party data, third party signals, which could mean, which could slightly change the trajectory, or let's say a particular, how you approach a particular account. Let's say a signal could be that you had a buyer, a champion, who has changed. He was working in one organization, and then he left the organization into another company, who, for example, also where they were also an opportunity, which increases the lead score in that particular account, right? um, so I wanted to discuss this with you. Like, how do you see this? The account selection, is it more rigid? What kind of patterns, trends do you see here?
Yeah, the this is really a template. So up on the top where you see the white font on dark blue where it says 50 plus employees, marketing staff, 50-mile
Yeah.
radius, government projects, those are all subject to change. There's probably 200 plus criteria that are common that sellers would say, with real focus, when I pick the 5 to 10 criteria, the 50 plus employees marketing staff,
Yeah.
there's about 200 things I would pick from. And I would change everything across the top for a different client because if I'm working for someone trying to sell investment management software,
Yeah.
it's a very different form of prospect selection than a heavy equipment company that wants to sell people in a 50-mile radius. Like 50-mile radius would not apply to a software vendor. They can sell to anyone globally. So this is just one example of a heavy equipment company that picked this criteria. Across the dark blue, for a SaaS company, we'd have different criteria. But what remains the same is the scoring. Someone who's really a prospect that's really good gets a +1. Someone that fits, but you're not that excited about, 0. Someone that's like, oh gosh, it's just outside of what we wanted to do, negative scoring. And then you can see in the column on the right, index score, you see very clearly, very simply, which prospects are at the top.
Awesome. Cool. I love that. I have a follow-up question. How many? So let's say you're doing a pilot with you came up with example investment, in the investment product service. Like what would be how big would be a pilot, an ideal pilot for you, right? So we don't go into thousands of accounts. What would
Right.
that be?
It usually starts with a conversation with the client. You look at who they've been working with, how big their prospect list is, and then you get them with some precision to come up with the criteria, the ones that are in the dark blue and white font across the top. And this was the example that the heavy equipment company said, this, if we got prospects that met all these criteria, we'd be really happy.
Yeah.
The investment management company had a different set of criteria. I don't remember all 5 across the top, but they were looking for investment companies at very high expenses where shareholders were complaining. They looked at companies that were hiring certain job titles because they were clearly understaffed in that area. They looked at companies that had bond offerings and a focus on bond offerings because that was one of the areas where they were strong. And then they started ranking. And we went from roughly 1,000 accounts down to about 25 that mattered. I have a client I've been working with. It's an insurance, and he said, "Oh, there's like 2,000 people that I've got to contact." And I said, "Really? I mean, based on your product, there's probably 15 companies in the United States that matter. You're not ready to go overseas yet. You haven't localized. You have 2 to 3 people at each of those companies. Let's say 4 generously, John. That's 60 companies total, not 2,000.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
And the relief on his face when he got that focus is like, oh, I don't have to hire 8 more people right now. Like, right. Those are the 15 companies that matter. If there's 4 people on the buying group, that's 60 people. 15 companies. That's totally manageable.
Wow.
So there's an example of how we were able to work with someone that saw the whole world in front of them and wanted to go talk to everyone and was overwhelmed by that task, and getting them to focus on, look, these are the 15 companies, and they're nodding, going, yeah, I like the other companies I really don't care about. It's like, great. Now let's assume there's 4 people. Like, oh, yeah, 4 people, that probably makes sense. There's a CRO, there's a head of investment and risk, there's a head of new product development, and there may be a CFO approval. 4 times 15, 60. We can do that.
Murray, there is a question. 1025
Yes.
accounts. What is the final post research accounts?
Where do you see that?
No, he's asking. Someone is giving a comment. So
Yes.
you mentioned 1025 accounts. Are these the final post research accounts? So after you do the the research, right? You do the DMU mapping, you map out, is
Yeah.
this is this before or after this? Like,
So I would say what your goal is for a particular ABM revenue campaign. If you're going to start this quarter, start this month, start Monday, it's like our client that's doing the insurance project, right? It's not 1,000 accounts. It's overwhelming. What you really want to do, and part of the hardest part of business leadership is saying no. And if people are like, oh, my cousin works here, I really like, might not be the right account. Might be someone in business development who said, oh, I've been working this account for 6 months. They're not getting anywhere. Like, no. So you really want something when you're getting started that's manageable. Like I wouldn't do less than 10 accounts. That's probably not ambitious enough. More than 25, you're probably going to get overwhelmed. But 25 accounts, 4 person per account, yeah, you're really only talking about 100 people. So, maybe you could do 25, but if your list is creeping up and it's 50 people and you want to use the word focus, seems inconsistent. Like keep it small to get started. And
I completely
have
agree
the
with you.
courage to say no.
I completely agree with you. We had an exercise with the company, and then they had, so it was the southern Europe, so Italy, Spain, and they had 10 accounts, and then the head of sales was like, guys, these are like way too many accounts. We're talking about banks, and then they cut the list to probably 4 or 5, because there's like, look, you got to give a prediction whether you're gonna close these accounts by the end of the year. So use your best guess, use the proprietary model, like data model, based on what kind of signals you see from the account, and then you need to cut it. So they had literally to cut their, you see, it's like you had an AE, you had a BDM working on that. So you had five accounts, right? Working the whole year, you work only on 5 accounts, right? What I'm saying is that if not every account is made equal. So some they'll generate more revenue, some need more care, some need less care. But I my experience is that I wouldn't even, if you're, let's say, if you're targeting enterprise, I think doing more than 50 accounts is exactly what you're saying. Doing more than 50 accounts is way too much. So I would say 50 account, like 40, like 40, 50 accounts. That's like ideal for a team of maybe 5, 6 AEs, and maybe like probably three, four BDMs, depending, and then marketing staff plus marketing staff. Because then because we're talking about ABM. This is not lead generation here. We're talking about ABM. And I think a lot of people now, the guy who gave us the comment, Aziz, or Bahauddin Aziz, he's working with Clay, and now I'm seeing a lot of companies come to me and say, "Oh, we have Clay, we have all these like beautiful companies, we've enriched some kind of table in Clay. Let's just like send hundreds of like cold emails."
Right.
That doesn't work. I saw your face. I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah. I have a
that
real estate client that has real estate software for managing occupancy. And his question was, why would I do ABM? I mean, all my competitors are doing this, breadth like garbage spam. I'm like, I think you just answered your own question, Brad. Like, why would you do it differently? Because you would be different. You would be unique. You would build that trust. You would be personalized. You would be focused. You would be able to relate to the buyers
yeah.
versus your competitors who are like spreading it thin like peanut butter. And, that's predictable. But you want to just be a second follower and a me too and like try to compete by yelling louder than the competitors. Like, focus, reach the people that will really matter, get them to relate to you, make sure you understand their problem, communicate clearly, professionally, compassionately, project yourself as an expert with the content you've written. You're going to have a few really valuable top prospects that will turn the needle on your business
Mhm.
versus, doing this breadth advertising, reaching out. Like, I watch TV at night and, the pharma ads, it's ridiculous. I see pharma ads for diseases and afflictions I'll never have. Like, it's wasted.
Yeah.
And you all have that experience personally, but some of us revert to it in our business that it's like, oh, let's just go for volume. It's like you're wasting time and resources, and you're not differentiating, and you're not projecting the kind of professionalism, reliability, and trustworthiness that you want to have associated with your business.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. I agree. There is a question from a friend of mine. Hi, Stefan. How are you? Stefan Turnmal has he's praising us. Great discussion. How do you build knowledge gaps into your criteria selection? How do you improve as you progress? So probably this is about like the Kaizen, and then how
Hmm.
do we ABM overall?
Well, start. There's two parts to that. One is knowledge, and then two, kind of building it in. So knowledge is a knowledge base. You use a CRM tool. You put in as much data as you can. You measure each step of the 7 steps, so you know if you're getting better or not. And with that measurement, this is Deming quality control principles, which Japanese manufacturers adopted before pretty much the rest of the world. And it's where we got the Lexus quality standard from, right? Everybody looked at automotives and in Japanese vehicles, Infiniti and Lexus, like pulled ahead of everybody else because they were adopting these kind of quality measurement tools. And when we do that with ABM, you build a knowledge base. Let's take content, for example. We measure the content. We know that these subjects published on these days have 3 to 4 times the engagement of something published on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. We know that if we publish at 7 in the morning Central European time, we actually get a better boost in terms of viewership, shares, and engagement. So, what do? We've measured, we have a database, we share the information across the team. We only publish on those days at those times with those subjects. And then as you refine the subjects, some of the new ones, which are only the ones that succeed, that drive the most traffic for us, next month some of those are at the bottom because we have other innovations. So then we refine and we improve again. It's an application of Kaizen. And that's just in the example of content. But we could do that in each of the 7 steps where we gather the knowledge, we record it, we share it across the team, we make sure everybody understands. We pick the winners. We pick the winning practices. It's based on merit. And we reinforce the ones that work, and we starve investment from the ones that don't work. We can put any more time or money in the stuff that doesn't work. It's the stuff that's at the top. We refine it, we improve it, we do it again, we measure it again.
Yeah, I would add to this. So very often when I work with enterprises, it's like it's everything sounds like a snowball, right? So you have the snowball effect. So very often you get very little to no engagement from an account, and it's actually the snowball effect because it keeps on the information keeps on gathering. They keep on like consuming your content. So I think um, I think in some way, yes, I would say it is important to it is easy to say, yeah, there is like you kill the stuff that doesn't work, but when your sales cycle is let's call it a year and a half, then you shouldn't take decisions very quickly, right? I think at least probably anywhere from 3 to 6 months, it's too early to take a decision on whether an account is going
Right.
to work for you or not, because you always have maybe some signals, but you don't know what's happening in their decision making committee. Maybe a person you were working and was a manager before, in 6 months the committee changed, and now they are in the driver's seat. They are part of the board and they can pull your solution to the top, and then you know you you get an RFP and you win, right? So you like it's actually all of these things. I mean, we can use technology like a lot, but I mostly rely in my work. I rely a lot on the experience that salespeople have. Like, do you have some sort of like a feeling that are we are we getting how do they call it in English, in American, where when you are sidelined, we're just taken, we're not there is an RFP, and then we're getting like fake signals because they've already chosen someone they're going to work with.
Right.
Uh, I don't know. There is a special word for that in corporate
Yeah.
America.
I'm
Uh,
trying to think of it. Um, yeah, the first one on long lead time sales. If you're looking at an 18-month sales cycle, clearly one of the goals is see, can you bring that to 17 months, 16 months, 15 months? Can
Yep.
you improve it? And your behavior is going to, your measurement intervals and change intervals will be different based on a long lead time sales cycle. That's just prudent. You don't want to change things too quickly, but instead of monthly, you might be looking at quarterly trends. The other one is the sideline where someone's ghosting you or dragging you along or trying to get a proposal out of you that they can use with leverage against your competitor. And they really have no bona fides interest in proceeding with you, but they're not going to tell you that. They'll drag you along. Um, I had an example of that with a Fortune 3 tech company that was selling to a U.S. distributor, and they brought one of our customers along in meetings, in like sales fairs, and wanted the small competitor there, and insincerely have them there just to put pressure on the large tech company. They had no intention of ever buying from the small company. And the small company kept working and kept spending money and kept putting in new prototypes. And really, they were only present at the vendor meetings and to create pressure on the large company. And at some point, just as sane business people, we have to look at, well, our sales cycle on this is way out of proportion to what we normally do. This is 7 months. It's normally a 2-month sales cycle. They haven't written a PO. You've just got to have the self-discipline. And again, one of the toughest parts of business leadership is to say no. I mean, at some point, you move them back to a nurturing campaign at the bottom of the pyramid. We're focused at the top of the pyramid. There are scale programs, but stop putting time and money and effort into a client that really doesn't seem to be closer to a decision. You have to have a firm timeline and go, we normally close in 2 months. We're now at 3-4 months with this client. We need to say, no, you're not spending more time on them. We're going to put them in a nurturing campaign. We're going to put them in a scale program where they'll get emails from us and updates. And when they're sincere and they want to close, we'll re-engage. But for now, it doesn't look real. So no, don't spend more time on them.
So there is a comment here from Stefan. Thanks for the layout of the principles. Spending most of my time in pharma and healthcare, I'm facing the overwhelming focus on data analytics. But often the opportunities hidden and the known unknowns are missed out by default. Well, what can I say? You have to personally, I think, in terms of like, even if there is like with all this data that you have to be, yeah, every week you have to. So I'll tell you about a model that is I think works pretty well. So every 2 weeks you have this like sort of like pipeline analytics where you go through a list of accounts you have. Everyone goes through a list of accounts they have. So it's like a joint marketing and sales operation. And then you make bets like, am I going to be able to move this deal from, let's say, no engagement to engagement, or from like no buying signal to signal, right? And based on the bets you have, you sort of like play, like, you think of it as chess or poker or something like that. And once you make a bet in 2 weeks, you can say, okay, let's look back and then see what did the bet work? Did the bet work or did not work? And another thing that I'm seeing work pretty well is that there is like the post-mortem. For example, you have a project didn't work out and you're doing a
Right.
post-mortem. What I'm implementing now is the pre-mortem. So I got this from the Diary of a CEO, a book. It's very simple. It's like you sort of like de-risk. It's instead of thinking of what could go right, you think of from the very beginning what could go wrong. So you're already
Right.
preparing for the death. So the patient is already dead. You're preparing to sort of like for the risks which are coming out there, and you're already preparing plan A, B, C, D. So whenever things go south, you're actually like prepared. So that's a few things that I wanted to share with
Right.
Stefan.
Yeah, on that comment, Stefan, I would say, and I flipped to the slide on 7 on measurement and data. there's an overwhelming amount of data coming to us and information, and we've got to sort out the signal and the noise.
Yeah.
Um, there's signals that really matter, and then there's a lot of background noise. There's so much information coming at us, and at some point, you've got to determine what are the data points that actually matter to you. Which ones work? Which ones give you the guidance you need? Which ones are more closely associated with an SQL that closes in 60 days instead of an SQL that closes in 6 months?
That's right.
So you've got to learn to filter out. There's so much data, it's overwhelming, and you could do data wallows, but then you lose focus. Um, it, the tough part is, what really matters? What points us in the right direction? What are the indicators that consistently show a pattern of this is a buyer willing and ready to convert? They have real pain from this problem. And in our empirical experience, they convert faster than other people. Doesn't mean you ignore everyone else. You move them to a scale program, move them to nurturing. But of all this overwhelming data, it can't all be relevant all the time. There's probably only 3 to 5 things that really give you the heart rate, respiration, the essential measurements of a prospect that's ready to convert, ready to buy, experiencing pain, aware of the problem.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, it's just very hard to filter the noise. I think that's the problem, not for only for ABM, but for everyone now with all these LLMs, AI slop. You call it how you want it, but
And relentlessly keep looking for those patterns. Keep looking for, that number seems to be high every time I close somebody. Maybe I should watch that more often. Or, I've been watching this other one, and it doesn't give me anything to act on. If it doesn't give you anything to act on, why are you watching it? Right? If it doesn't change your behavior, it's useless. If you get data and you have a data flow and you have empirical data that says, I need to act because I'm seeing this change and I'm seeing this change in the prospect, that's a valuable one. You want that one. If you have other stuff you're looking at that never tells you it's time to act and doesn't give you insight that changes your behavior, it's not relevant.
Yeah, that's true.
If there are other questions, I'd recommend email them to Stefan, email them to me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Murray Vince on LinkedIn. I'm fortunate to have a unique name that way. You can find me. Happy to help with problems and get you started. If it's a longer term engagement, we can work that out. But first problems, I'm passionate enough about ABM. I'll answer initial questions and help get people started on ABM best practices.
Awesome. I had the uttermost pleasure, Miri, having this chat with you. Thank you, dear listeners. Thank you for your questions, Stefan, Aziz. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, great Friday evening. Thank you for being with us.
Great.
See you on our next episode.
Thank you.